advanced technology, the idea of sending humans to live on other planets will soon become a reality. But why, in the vast expanse of space, do we choose Mars? What makes the pristine land on Mars so appealing? Is it that the universe offers no better choice for us?
This place has many similarities and is suitable for humans to set foot on. There are 2 moons through days at night, a surface to stand on, and temperatures with intolerable limits.
Ice at the poles and groundwater deep underground exist. Building a base on Mars is not far-fetched and can even be achieved with current technology. To terraform Mars to make it better and turn it into humanity's second home. However, before reaching that bright vision, we have many immediate goals to accomplish.
Complete the second phase of the colonization process.
It can be seen that from ancient times to the present, colonizing a new land or territory always goes through 3 phases. Phase 1, we conduct exploration and reconnaissance of that new land, funded by pioneering nations' money and technology. They can plant flags to mark territory, announce the land has been found and visited, but do not stay at this time.
Phase 2 requires more resources because we must build temporary settlement outposts, preparing for long-term living and further exploration of this new land. However, it still heavily depends on manpower, resources, technology, and money from leading nations and external sources. Not to mention that settlement here can fail for many reasons, as the land is still quite unfamiliar and humans have not yet adapted. More fortunate will be those who survive and settle permanently here. Phase 3, the flourishing stage when stable residential areas develop, where labor, agriculture, industry, and trade activities occur, sending exploited resources back to the homeland.
It can be said that this is the stage where humans here can fully adapt to the new land and live and exploit it, with little dependence on the homeland. The process humans have undergone in colonizing Mars is almost similar to that on Earth, but at a higher level, extremely costly, difficult, and with more risks. But this is a priceless investment,
like building a base on the moon.
If we overcome this second phase, Mars will enter a new era, becoming an interplanetary travel hub and building a space industry.
Another advantage is that since no one else has lived on Mars, we sometimes do not need to conflict with millions of indigenous people during this colonization process. Mars, however, is still truly harsh, a colder version of Earth, with high radiation doses and toxic substances. Even the basic act of breathing is impossible. To overcome Phase 2, we must carefully deal with the immediate difficulties on Mars, and find ways to temporarily adapt it to work and conduct research. Currently, humanity is still conducting explorations via satellites and rovers on Mars,
to better understand the planet before truly setting the first footsteps there.
We need to know about the surface, structure, climate, atmosphere, magnetic field, and many other things. To serve the important first decision, finding a suitable place to build a base. If landing in a suitable location, building the outpost will be more convenient.
So, where could that location be?
We know that about 70% of the body is water, and we can endure hunger for a long time but cannot withstand thirst for more than 3 days. Therefore, naturally, we must find a location as close as possible to an existing water. Based on current data, the area below the North Pole of Mars is the most favorable. The ice source at the polar region and water deep beneath the surface here are important supplies for us.
The Arcadia Planitia Plain and the Thom Lunbang Ha in Deuteronomus Mensae.
This is a place balanced in the presence of water ice, light, and temperature,
with suitable altitude for ships carrying huge equipment to land more easily in Mars' thin atmosphere,
lacking resistance. When we have completed Phase 1, found a suitable base location, and established a base on the Moon as a transport intermediary, Phase 2 officially begins, awaiting the brave people setting foot on Mars, which poses challenges and obstacles both physically and mentally.
Here's what we will have to face,
along with basic solutions.
Everything needs energy to live.
Humans also need energy to survive and work. But Mars is an energy-poor land, poor in both solar thermal energy and mineral resources. Methods of generating electricity on Earth are difficult to apply on Mars.
Initially, solar energy can be a good choice.
But the distance from the Sun to Mars is much greater than to Earth, causing the solar energy received there to be only about 40% of normal.
Even this meager energy source can be suddenly blocked for months by massive and persistent dust storms.
Thus, solar energy is clearly unreliable and insufficient. Wind energy. The Martian atmosphere is so thin that there is essentially no usable wind. Water is insufficient and lacks the circulation necessary for geothermal energy. Using neat heat from within the Earth is also impractical because the interior of Mars is too cold. Even thermal energy from combustion is impossible due to the atmosphere's low oxygen and lack of abundant fuel. At this point, only nuclear energy remains feasible. However, mining Martian elements is not easy, so everything from fuel to reactors will need to be fully transported from Earth. This solution could provide energy for the outpost's first few years. The energy we generate is useless if we die immediately upon landing on Mars because we cannot breathe.
Atmospheric pressure on Earth at standard sea level is 101,300 pascals, while on Mars it is 700 pascals, less than 1% of Earth's. If an astronaut were not wearing a pressure suit, all bodily fluids would instantly boil because the Martian atmospheric pressure is far below the Armstrong limit of 6,300 pascals, causing the boiling point of water to drop to the body temperature, leading to loss of consciousness and death. Furthermore, the Martian atmosphere is about 95% CO2. Clearly, astronauts need spacesuits to provide oxygen, but they cannot live in them permanently. This is a decisive factor for the structure and shape of the base. In living quarters, we need to simulate Earth's normal atmosphere by pressurizing and supplying a mixture of 78% N2 and 21% O2. The problem is that the pressure difference between inside and outside could cause the outpost to explode if the living structure is box-shaped or has sharp angles. Therefore, the base must be tubular or spherical, with smooth, rounded curves to withstand the pressure differential, and airlocks must always be sealed and function smoothly to prevent astronauts from either exploding or suffocating. Earth's magnetic field is much weaker than Earth. Radiation exposure to exceed NASA. An effective way to deal with this is to cover the bases with a layer of CO2 ice synthesized from the atmosphere and a roughly 1 meter thick layer of regolith on the outside. While this does not provide absolute protection, it can help astronauts survive safely for a suitably long period. The downside is that being completely covered by ice and dust would prevent the base from receiving external light, making it look like a dark, windowless, lightless pipe from the inside. And from the outside, it would look like an ancient tomb. Even with such a sturdy protective base, it cannot do the same for those outside. Therefore, outdoor work would have to be delegated via autonomous rovers and remotely controlled helicopters operated by humans inside the base. Thus, we need to develop more durable and flexible robots. Ingenuity, a small helicopter currently being tested in the ongoing Mars 2020 mission, could be a starting point for this process. Because the environment's toxicity to humans necessitates minimizing the need to go outside. However, if working outside is necessary, Martian dust immediately becomes a latent danger. Martian dust is much finer than Earth's, so it can easily infiltrate the delicate circuits of machinery. Martian dust also has the property of being very dry, making it prone to static charge and sticking to everything, including spacesuits. Here, things become problematic as soon as an astronaut working outside returns to the base. Because it is fine, it can easily penetrate human lungs, and worse, it contains toxic perchlorate salts, particularly harmful to the thyroid gland. It is highly inadvisable to let astronauts be directly exposed to this dust when removing their spacesuits. We could solve this by attaching spacesuits to external entry ports. This way, it can be removed without bringing dust into the base. The issues of energy and human safety have been addressed, but we still have another essential need: food. Martian soil is highly alkaline and lacks nutrients necessary for plant growth. We could attempt to terraform the soil and use waste as fertilizer. But overall, effectiveness is not guaranteed due to the red soil and, especially, the excessive In theory, we can grow plants using Martian soil.
as it contains all types of nutrients from micro to macro, but having all types does not mean having sufficient quantities. Therefore, we need to supplement with fertilizer to provide plants with both adequate types and quantities of. However, growing plants on Mars actually faces many more obstacles. Crops need a lot of water to grow well. On Earth, there is already a natural water cycle from lakes, air, and water circulation. However, only 2% of water in Martian soil exists, and it may not need to be liquid water. Not to mention that the available water sources here are certainly very scarce. They cannot be used directly and must undergo a very extensive filtration. Earth's soil also contains something important, which is organic matter and living organisms. Because living organisms play a irreplaceable role in decomposing organic matter in the soil
into nutrients that plants can use.
Especially nitrogen-fixing bacteria, which help convert free nitrogen in the atmosphere into nitrogen compounds that plants can utilize. Obviously, these are things that are not readily available or extremely rare on Mars. And it would be very costly to artificially handle these tasks. Not to mention, we must protect crops from other extreme weather conditions on Mars. Therefore, we can use another method that has also been successfully applied on Earth, which is hydroponics. Growing vegetables with hydroponics, we do not need to use soil, but only water and nutrients, and it is suitable for many types of plants. The amount of water used in hydroponics is significantly less, especially since it can be,
and best of all, inside a base, where there are full artificial conditions that we have established. We can also raise fish for meat. This method is quick and much more efficient. At the same time, providing sufficient food and diverse meals for the hardworking people here. But there are still barriers and risks that cannot be completely resolved to this day. First, gravity on Mars is only 37% of Earth's. And this is truly a high risk to the long-term health of astronauts, who are accustomed to Earth's gravitational pull. They may face diseases and symptoms such as muscle atrophy, osteoporosis due to lack of weight affecting these parts, causing them to gradually degenerate. Issues with blood circulation and to somewhat reduce this harm, like astronauts working on the ISS in microgravity. They must engage in high-intensity and regular exercise to put pressure on muscles, bones, and the heart, slowing down their degeneration. In the future, with technological advancements, we could build a rotating base to simulate some gravity. This mechanism works similarly to how astronauts get used to G-forces, using a rotating training cage that spins in multiple directions. Another risk to consider is the psychology of those working on Mars. Living in a toxic, stifling environment, lacking light, seeing the same group of people for a long time, and following a repetitive routine. Especially, constantly under pressure from the risk of accidents during Mars settlement that could kill them at any time. These things can easily break a person's psyche. Like other jobs in confined and dangerous spaces, individuals must always be psychologically monitored to ensure they can endure such a lifestyle long-term. More importantly, work groups must be rotated periodically so the old group has time to recover mentally. This is the most feasible scenario if building a base on Mars at this stage. The construction can be extremely costly, long-term, and dangerous, but if provided with sufficient resources from Earth, we can certainly complete Phase 2. However, this is precisely the fatal weakness in the Mars-based construction plan and the greatest danger. We cannot launch ships from Earth to Mars whenever we want. The only window for travel between the two planets occurs once every 2 years, when Mars and Earth are in opposition. In other words, the only travel window between Earth and Mars opens once every 2 years, and it would be a disaster if an emergency arises on Mars, with a distress signal sent to Earth. We have no choice but to patiently wait for the window to open again. And by then, it might be too late when the rescue team arrives and finds the base turned into a tomb. Despite the numerous obstacles mentioned, turning Mars into a second home is truly a dream worthy and necessary endeavor. The benefits gained from it are immense and priceless. Even if many obstacles arise, they are only waiting for humans to overcome with their own strength and wisdom.
and humanity possesses these qualities. It is fortunate that we get to live and cheer for such exciting and anticipated missions.
And who knows, we might live long enough to experience a city on the Red Planet.